Hey, how you going? So we're just about to get cracking into the afternoon. A little bit quick fire this afternoon. Slightly longer to the first one. F-tab? After-tab. Okay. I'm not going to repeat that. So just a quick couple of things. One, a reminder. Something I forgot earlier is that if you can only go on the jet boats if you paid to go on the jet boats. Somehow magically we'll know if you've not paid. I don't know how that's going to work. And another thing you might have noticed if you've looked at your shirt, that there's no NZNOG logo on the front of the shirt, which is totally not a mistake. That was totally intentional. But and Dave said we're not allowed to say who made the mistake, Dave. But if you want an NZNOG logo on the front of your shirt, just drop it off at the desk with your name and address, and we'll get one printed on and we'll courier it out to you. And if you're from a bunch of people from one place, it would be handy if you could do them together. Not that we're cheap and want to ship them all at once, but we'll save a bit of money and ship them all at once. So that'd be quite cool. Yeah. Cool. So next up, we've got F-tab from ISOC.
Hello everyone, this is Aftab Siddiqui from Internet Society. Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly, and second time as well. And there are no medium or large shirts, only XL, and the large one is very large. So can we request for a smaller shirt as well? Okay, yeah, and is it expensive to send it to Australia? Anyway, yeah, so my job is to keep you awake after a good lunch. Well, it was a breakfast and lunch together for me. Yeah, so let's talk about some manners right after lunch, yes. So I'm Aftab Siddiqui from Internet Society. My role is to be in the Asia Pacific and do what I'm doing right now. So what is the problem I'm trying to address? Well, I'm not trying to address, everybody is trying to address. And we have few people in the audience who have been trying to address for more than 20, 25 years. So the problem is internet routing table. There are issues. Traffic can be hijacked, blackholed, derouted, detoured. Traffic can be spoofed. Fat fingers. You don't have to have fat fingers to do fat finger stuff. Well, apart from Andrew Koo. So yeah, it's okay if you don't know Andrew Koo. BGP is based on trust, absolute trust, which is not there at all. So you have to rely on the vulnerabilities of the BGP, and that's the problem. Some headlines. I tried to hide how Pakistan hijacked YouTube as much as I could, but that was the biggest incident who created all the fuss in 2008. When I was in Pakistan, it happened. I was not working for PTCL. I never worked for PTCL. That's a disclaimer. So, but we knew it. They were doing it. We called them a couple of times. They said, no, it's only for Pakistan. He said, no, just go check the news. We don't care about the news. It's not happening. Anyway, it happened. It happened for 2 hours or something. We were hiding for a month or so, and every RFC, every draft mentions that incident now. So you can't hide it anymore, PTCL. Well, PTCL, if you don't know, it is the Telstra of Pakistan, or Bogus of New Zealand. Just try to unheard that. So anyway, not a day without an incident. It happens every day. You don't see it in the news. Just 2 months, 388 incidents were reported. Sources from BGP streams. BGP leaks, 226, hijacks, possible or probably fat fingers, 162. Leaks are also fat fingers as well, sometimes deliberate or mistakes, but it happens. So what's happening? IP prefix hijacks, everybody's aware of that, how it happens, why it happens. Route leaks, it's getting more and more common. Address spoofing. it's still there. It's diminishing, but not much. Well, because you have more vectors to attack, you don't rely on the IP spoof a lot now. I mean, you have a Mirai bot. You don't have to rely on spoofing the addresses. You can just use the Mirai bot. Are there any solutions available in the market? Well, there are. Prefix and AS path filtering, it's been there since forever. BGP sec. RFC was announced. So just a raise of hands, how many of you know about BGP sec? Well, except Jeff, sorry. I mean, he's behind the whole SIDR thing. But anyway, that says everything. 7, 8, 10 people out of everyone. That is the main problem. It's not a solution. Who is routing registries, peering databases? Solutions are there. The problem is nobody's using them. Lack of deployment, that's the problem. That's the big but here. Lack of reliable data. There are too many registry data available with junk in it. So you can't just blindly rely on them. So that's why Internet Society came up with this idea almost 3 years ago now. Well, we should do something, initiate a process where everybody can jump in, everybody from the community who is concerned, jump in and do something good and do the right things. And the idea was very simple. Good manners, filter, anti-spoofing, coordination, global validation. We've been, like, when I started studying BGP, the first thing I studied was always filter your downstreams, always filter your customers. And we have been hearing this for more than 2 decades, at least, or at least a decade, 10 years should be enough. We still don't do that. We still don't filter it. This is the basic thing we are trying to say. Anti-spoofing, just filter, just make sure that you don't put something you're not supposed to put on the internet. Filter it. Coordination, talk to each other. Make sure your whose databases are up to date. Make sure your contact details are up to date. Don't leave those people's name and phone numbers or email address who are not part of your company or not part of the world anymore and still there. So update your database. Global validation. Routing information on a global scale, publish your data so others can validate. How? We'll look into this one. Growth so far, well, not very exponential, I would say. Since 2014, we have been adding more and more ASNs. So mostly from US, Europe, 3 or 4 from whole APAC. So that's not very encouraging for a region like Asia Pacific. It's huge, biggest population, biggest number of service providers, and it's missing. And the problem people raised when I presented this thing in OSNOG, and they said, well, we never heard about it. So people in OSNOG heard it. NZNOG, I'm here, so at least you cannot complain. I can justify my trip. And this is the document. It's a B Corp, nothing else. How to do it, simple. So how many of you implement all other B Corps, right? Or you create SOPs. So just read it out, how simple it is. It's not a rocket science, 2 things. Filter your prefixes, and make sure you are not part of the anti-spoofing, so you do source address validation. It's sometimes difficult for multi-homed customer, but at least if it's a stub customer, if it's stub network, it's just single-homed, you can easily do source address validation. Is there a business case? Well, there is a business case for PTCL to fix their reputation. So if you don't want to be PTCL or Telecom Malaysia or any other big news headline maker, there is a business case. But in reality, yes or no. So what we did last year, we conducted a survey and talked to a lot of service providers, mostly again in North America, Europe, and in some countries in Asia Pacific, predominantly in Japan. So Service provider was a mix. How many employees do they have? What is their infrastructure? So we handpicked people, and we interviewed them and found some interesting results. So some of them were aware of that, but a big chunk was that, okay, fine, I heard about that one, but I'm not sure what it is. And another chunk said, well, I don't even know about that. So that was another issue. That's why we said, okay, fine, we'll go to all these places. We'll try to pass on the message, and let's see what happens afterwards. People who knew about it said, well, yeah, it does make a difference. How effective do you think MANRS could be improving internet security? Some said, yeah, to some extent. But the response was not very overwhelming. Question was, do you see MANRS having a significant effect on improving internet security or your organizational security? He said, yes, some improvement. Reason, which aspect of MANRS would provide the greatest reason for implementing for your organization? Being a good internet citizen. Well, that's not a good enough reason. Being more secure. Increasing operational efficiency or regulatory compliance. I mean, it's not part of any regulatory compliance anywhere in the world right now. That's what I am aware of. If there is something in New Zealand, please just let me know. So this is what MANRS is, right? This is a brief introduction. What we are trying to say, what we are trying to do is not rocket science. We are trying to tell you, do the right things. But now let me show you the bigger picture of the problem in numbers and in statistics. So in New Zealand, there are a number of, the ASNs are 573, relatively smaller in terms of ASNs. So a couple of members have multiple ASNs, but yes, most of them have one. One company has more than 12 ASNs. I am not sure why. And they are not using more than one. So they have ASNs, probably they can sell it out somewhere in 10, 20 years, make some money. I'm not sure why. Oh, man, as I said, Telstra has 64, so don't even compare. Number of IPv6 prefixes, most of the people have /32s, some have /48, 47s. A mix, mostly /32s. Number of IPv4 prefixes, a lot has got /24 in last 3 years because of the last /8 policy. Announcements, there's a lot of deaggregation happening in New Zealand, of course. If you have at least 750 /24s allocations, so of course you have to announce that much as well. So it's double, around 1,400 something /24s coming out just from New Zealand. So deaggregation, but it is not wrong. Well, the routing table size is 710,000 now. So yeah, we are heading towards 1 million probably. So it's okay. Everybody in the world is doing deaggregation. So you're not the only culprit. So just to give you an example, a difference. In Australia, there are more than 11,000 /24s in our routing table, as compared to the biggest chunk is around 27% of the whole routing table in Australia is /24. So that's the biggest chunk. So that's fine. It's not that bad for New Zealand. RPKI status, how many of you have heard about RPKI? Good, and still you don't do it. Awesome, right? So, so there are two camps. And I would like to put myself in a neutral one, which is not a camp anyway. So one is, some people don't like it. They don't see it as a problem solver. And some people do like it. They think it can solve a problem, but they think everybody has to implement it, otherwise there is no point. Both camps don't want to implement RPKI. And that's the problem. And this is quite evident from here. So I picked up, one more complaint I would like to lodge here, and the problem is I tried to use Internet NZRS RPKI validator server last night. It's badly broken. Fix it or shut it down. Yes. So.
Actually, I went through and found out for New Zealand there's no problems with it, so it must be connection from somewhere.
Okay, so it's okay. It could be. I tried it from multiple places, and then I used a VM in Singapore, but it still didn't work out. So it's okay. If there is no problem, that could be me. Absolutely fine. But it was working. There were too many timeouts. Everything else was working fine. But anyway, if you have a RPKI validator in your country, it's an awesome thing. You should have it, and it should be in a work. Find. Telstra Clear. I try to figure out whose Telstra Clear is, so I end up knowing it's Vodafone. So they don't have any RPKI resources. Spark Trading, Snap, none. Divoli, which was Vibe, they are doing the good thing. Out of 57 V4 they are advertising, 35 of them are signed. So probably they can comment that why they signed it, just because APNIC asked them to do it, or they gave them a T-shirt. I mean, I have 6, 7 of them now, so ready to roar. I mean, it's a good T-shirt, to be honest. And but why? If you don't see a solution, then why? And those who haven't, obviously, it doesn't feel like it's a solution, so they are not doing it. So yeah, so it's not like I'm finding invalids. So there are very few invalids. That's quite strange here. I found a lot of invalids in Singapore, in Malaysia, in a lot of South Asian countries, too many invalids. So what they did, like, they went to a conference, APNIC asked them to sign their resources. They did it. They went back home and did something opposite. They started advertising different prefixes. So invalid happens if you have signed you have signed a prefix, a /22 prefix, but you are advertising multiple /24s. So you do get invalids, that's fine. But Divoli is doing it, and there are other 202 prefixes who are signed. So there is some reason why they did it, just because they were asked to do it, or anyway, there was some reason. I don't know. BGP hijacks happened for or from New Zealand. So 15th of January, Origin AS was supposed to be Citilink, but somehow it came out from AS 1221. And for 4 days. That's strange. Origin AS 9834, it should be TradeMe, but again, it came out from Telstra. It wasn't for 4 days, but just for an hour, 30 minutes only. Yeah. Possible hijack, I wouldn't consider. So I tried to dig deep into this one. It was supposed to be from Gisborne East Coast Internet Service, but an AS came out which is seriously very bizarre. Yeah, so it's unregistered AS. It came out from their own AS. So because somebody, somewhere in this company, testing something, and they decided to leak it themselves. So they didn't filter it, and their upstream didn't filter it. But it happened. So I checked the route dump of 31st August, and it was only for very brief moments. So I see it on 1 hour, and the other dump, it doesn't have it. So it was for a very brief moment, but it was captured by BGP stream because they're capturing it. So it was a brief moment, but again, it shows the vulnerability of BGP, that if you do something wrong, even within your lab, you have to make sure that you're not advertising it. They end up doing it. If you know those guys, please let them know that fix your prefix filters, because there is some problem there. Bogus prefixes and ASNs from New Zealand. Before going there, again, some raise of hands. How many of you know about CIDR report? Don't shut it down, Jeff. See? Too many people. Yes. I'm giving you a reason every conference, one by one. So people do read it, people know about that, and when something doesn't work, people do complain to you, right? No. No? Okay. I did.
Thank you.
So on the CIDR report, every day you can just go find out if your ISP is there or not. That's it, nothing else. Don't do anything else. I ran the test for a week. Strange results for New Zealand. I went back a month. Very strange results for New Zealand. I tried to go back 2 months. I was surprised. Seriously, I was surprised. Not a single bogus prefix coming out from New Zealand. Well, a big round of applause for yourself, guys. It's very strange, because sometimes we have to convince a lot of people to stop advertising such nonsense, and they still don't listen to us. So if you are aware of the CIDR report, whenever you have time, go check the possible bogons or possible bogus, and you will find half of the private ASN being advertised from Australia, APT. We highlighted that in NZNOG. Multiple emails, nothing changed. Still there. It's for your viewing pleasure. Just go and find out. Possible bogus ASN, well, I can't say a big round of applause for you. One of the private ASN is just going out. And the company is 132917. It is Yellow Pages. So again, I dig deep. I said, no. If New Zealand doing something great, there's something wrong here. So again, I checked the routing table. So who's the culprit here? Themselves. How? Because they are testing something in their lab. Because they don't have any prefix filters. That's why it's just going out on the internet. Okay, so let's not blame Yellow Pages group only. Let's blame somebody else who is their upstream provider. So it's a chain of trust, right? This is what we said. BGP relies on the chain of trust. Yellow Pages group did something wrong. Spark said, nah, I trust them. Just bring everything in. And that's what happens with the upstream of Spark, and then chain reaction, and the route table still has this entry. This result is from last night. So still there. If you know either Spark or Yellow Pages, please fix it. I mean, it's a genuine mistake. I can see that. It's somebody testing it. But if you have a filter in place, it will never go out. Simple as that. A spoofer. So how many of you have heard about the Spoofer project from CAIDA, C-A-I-D-A, right? At least 30, 40% of you. So they do the same thing. The problem with that is you have to download a client and run it from your network, and only that IP will be tested and along the and the prefix. So it's very, the results, you can't just say, well, this ISP is not doing it, this ISP is doing it, because it is based on the client. So it's better to test it every now and then with multiple IPs just to make sure. So this is very strange behavior. It's not a strange behavior. We see this everywhere. People filter the V4 part, but they don't filter the V6. It's pretty common everywhere. But the results are old. So you can say the results are from 2016, early 2017. So it's a mix. So you can't just say that it's happening now. So the results are not conclusive. So it's a good idea to test it if you're filtering it or not, if you're doing source address validation. But yeah, just have a look. Take a look if you're doing it or not. And if your ISP or ASN is part of the list, I think it's a good idea to have a look. Conclusion. Problem is there, right? Problem is there and we need to fix it. How? We gave you a solution. I mean, the solution was there. I said, well, just implement it. If you have a better solution, well, raise your hand and say it. If you think this is a good enough solution, a workable solution, well, then implement it. Differentiation for the enterprise buyer. I mean, we thought that probably enterprises will say, well, if you do the right things, we will sign up with you. We will buy transit from you if you are filtering your prefixes, yes or no. But that was not the case. So it's difficult to convince enterprises, but it is easier for the ISPs to join the bandwagon. Join us if you think it's a good idea. You don't have to join us to do the right thing. Don't join us, but at least do the filtering. And make sure that nothing happens. Not a lot of bad things are happening from New Zealand. Make sure that it stays like that. And at least you can do better, just to make sure that you are the right example for the APAC. That's it. If you have any questions, if you think it's not a good idea, please let me know. That's all from my side. No questions. It was very self-explanatory. Oh, we have a question. Come on. It was not very self-explanatory.
Hi, Sebastian Castro, Internet NZ. We run the validator. It's working, so I don't know what happened to you. I don't agree with your method of disclosing, oh, it's broken, because we've been running it for 4 years, and only we had one user during that time.
Okay, and so that was probably me last night?
No. So you listed the list. You have a list of solutions: BGP, SEC, and RPKI, and MANRS, and everything in you. And all the data you're showing has a pattern, which is a very low level of adoption, right? So why do you think MANRS, the solution you're preaching, is better than the others and will be better adopted if you see this pattern of low adoption?
Because there are inherent problems in RPKI, and I don't believe in it.
Yeah,
and it's not going to solve the problem unless every soul on this earth adopts it.
Is the same with BCP 38?
No, at least New Zealand is bogus and Bogon's free.
Yeah, no, but that's the filtering of packets.
So anti-spoofing is an issue, yes, and it will remain there forever. I mean, it's as I said. URPF for a single-homed customer is not an issue. People say, well, it doesn't work for multi-homed. It works for single-home. Do it on single-home at least. So people won't do it. I agree. So first thing, do the filtering. You're doing it. Second thing is, find out if you can protect from anti-spoofing to some extent. Do whatever you can. I mean, there are challenges. I am not disagreeing with that. Mm-hmm. There are technical problems putting source address validation on customer end. If they are multi-home, they are screwed.
Yeah. So the follow-up.
So I'm not saying that it's the best solution, but I'm saying it is possibly the only solution available right now, unless Jeff comes up with a better idea.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. So the follow-up observation is. There's a lot of technologies out there that are taking a very long time to be adopted. We can talk about IPv6, we can talk about the NSEC, and we still see the same pattern. And what probably Geoff might agree with this is there is no economic incentive to an ISP to dedicate one engineer or two engineers, work this out and keep it going if no one else is doing it. So they get little benefit for a lot of effort.
I agree for RPKI, but not for the filtering. Just take the feed from Team Cymru. That's it. They provide BGP feed for free. Or just parse CIDR report. That's what I do. And it's just one script. That's it. Nothing. You don't have to invest any resource on that. Address validation, yes. Sometimes it's CPU intensive. Sometimes it's technically not possible. But as I said, do whatever you can. Updating your WHOIS, which is part of the MANRS, I think it's a moral responsibility of every service provider to keep their WHOIS updated, right? If somebody wants to contact you, there should be a way to contact you, and that is WHOIS. Andrew.
Hold on.
Sorry, you are not allowed to ask questions, Andrew.
Okay, this is really straightforward, square thing. Yeah. So you mentioned who is updating. It's a major issue for folks with all historical AU NIC type allocations who are not members of APNIC. There's currently no easy way to update ERX type records or similar.
APNIC wants to pay to get money from you, that's why. Sorry.
So hence, unfortunately, even follow the rule of let's all follow MANRS, you can't do that.
Now, it applies exactly. If you are part of the ERX, I mean, it's easier for you to sell it and make money rather than just go and give money to APNIC and become a member. That is strange. It's a policy matter, not a technical issue. It's a policy issue which RIRs have to address. I still remember one comment coming out from Andy Linton when he came on the mic in one of the APNIC meetings. He said, I have a /16. I want to register in APNIC. I don't have any incentive to register it in APNIC. In fact, I end up losing money without getting anything. And it's a genuine problem. And in Australia and New Zealand, there are a lot of ERXs. So I totally agree with you. It's a policy issue APNIC has to address. And because it's not a very it's not a very big issue for them, so it's just at the back burner right now. So yeah, let's raise it in Apricot. Anyone else? All good then.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
It is you next, Jordan, isn't it? Yeah, I was. Oh, okay. So next up, Jordan from Internet NZ, who fantastic supporter of NZNOG and also supplied this awesome microphone to give us an update.
Why do you think that's from us?
I don't know.
It's slightly pink. Hi, everyone. You're all here. It's amazing. I hope you haven't melted or fallen asleep. My name is Jordan Carter, and I am speaking to you today as the new Group Chief Executive at the Internet NZ Group. And what I'm going to do very briefly is just talk about some changes to our structure and people that have happened in the last few months. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Brent Carey, who's going to take you through a consultation that the Domain Name Commission is running at the moment on Port 43 access to the WHOIS system and the .nz DNS, because we need input on that before a closing date of 5th of February. So Internet NZ set up NZRS and the Domain Name Commission to manage .nz on its behalf in 2002. Over time, there was kind of a spin-up structure of having separate boards and separate CEOs and stuff. 15 years later, last year, the council spent about a year reviewing that structure, decided some savings and efficiencies could be made by pulling the organization into a bit more of a conventional group without the 20 governors and directors and 3 CEOs and 3 admin teams and so on and so on. So they made that call last year. They did a recruitment process, which I ended up succeeding in, so that's why I'm here today, to make 2 significant changes, I guess, to the way we run the corporate structure around .nz. One is to integrate the existing Internet NZ, the membership organization that's done public policy advocacy, grants, some international representation and so on, with NZRS, which delivers the .NZ, SRS, and DNS, has delivered new products like the broadband map, working on a few others, that has the technical research team led by Sebastian, and a couple of other products and services as well. So that merger is currently underway. And I've been in this job for 9 days, 8.5 days. So I don't have a lot to tell you about how that's going to look, but the design process is underway today. The other thing that was done is that historically the Domain Name Commission was the policy maker and the policy enforcer for .nz policy, who could register .nz domain name and so on. Part of the review determined that it would be a good idea to separate the enforcement from the policy making process. That you shouldn't, if you're the police, write the law, as it were. So from the 1st of April or 3rd of April, whatever the Monday is, will be the policy-making function for .nz domain names will transfer to Internet NZ as well. So the Domain Name Commission continues. It remains the place where registrants can get satisfaction if they need to deal with a problem with the registrar. They'll be still enforcing the policy framework and so on. All of the support people and contacts you're used to dealing with if you're a .nz registrar are the same people. The quality of service that we have historically provided with the register and the DNS is a kind of core objective of the new organization, isn't going to be compromised. This change, other than that executive and governance layer, hasn't been driven by trying to save money or things like that. So it's not going to be a case of pulling out staff and reducing quality or anything like that. That's all off the table. So some of you will have heard about that, some of you won't, and because we've got 15 minutes for all of this, that's all I'm going to say. It's really brief. One of the consequences of that is that both Debbie Monahan and Jay Daly have finished up their engagements with the group. Obviously, as part of designing the new organization, especially with the NZRS part, we'll be looking at what technology and business gaps that leaves. So I think a lot of you know Jay, know his sort of drive to develop some new products and being a kind of key player in the technical community here and in driving the development of .nz particularly. So that's a gap that I certainly can't fill with my more policy-related background, but we know we need to fill it. So you'll hear more about that in a few months. That's all I think I had planned to say, except to mention a couple, so that's the organizational stuff. We'll do the thing that Brent needs to talk about, and then we'll take any questions at the end. There are a couple of public policy things I just want you to think about as well as an internet technology community. The minister this morning talked about the idea of an internet bill of rights. And I suggest you engage with that process, whatever it looks like when it starts, because all sorts of people think they have rights or want to create rights, and I'll come on to one of those in a sec. And as internet intermediaries or service providers, that might affect you in ways that you didn't think about at the start of the process. So if you can have a voice through your representative organizations, and we'll be keeping an eye on it, that's probably a good thing to do. The other one is the copyright review. The Copyright Act is under review. The new government is continuing with that. There are sets of rights holders who want to require ISPs to block access to websites. You've got old site blocking argument, as if blocking a website will somehow solve the plague of piracy that is destroying Hollywood. Sorry, I didn't mean to convey anything with that tone of voice. It was entirely an accident. They are going to make the case, and they're going to present evidence about site blocking, and they're going to present evidence that says that piracy is destroying the world. A lot of you in the room are in organizations that are in a key position to validate or not those kind of hypotheses, and to explain with operational experience what site blocking would mean and how well it would or wouldn't work. I urge you to pay attention to that debate. The government's meant to be releasing a issues paper sometime in April, we think. It'll be open for consultation, and they're interested, which is nice, in evidence, not assertion. So evidence, how much traffic on your networks is pirated content compared to what it used to be, versus legit services like Netflix or YouTube, etc. There's a lot of FUD out there, and I'm sure it will get worse as lots of money is at stake in this process. So those are just two that I wanted to mention, the copyright review and this Bill of Rights thing. I think they're topics that would be great for you to pay attention to. On whoas, Brent, are you? Where are you? you're somewhere in here. Come on up. Brent Carey is the incoming Domain Name Commissioner. So he was hired by DNCL in July, part of succession planning for Debbie Monahan, and he's got a privacy and policy background. He worked in Australia for a number of years, and I think you're originally a lawyer? Yeah, he's a lawyer, so forgive him for that in advance. But one of DNCL was, actually, I'm not even going to try and explain it because I'll just get little bits of it wrong. So I'll hand over to Brent, and then after he's done his talk, we'll come back for questions on either point. Thank you for listening and being awake and not melting. Brent.
Thank you. I really want to thank the trustees because we've got about 7 minutes to cover this. Like Jordan being new in the role, this is my second week, so I'm really on a learning curve, and that's why I was really glad to have the opportunity to come and talk to you all today, because you're a really important part of the community that I want to engage with. So, we're running a consultation on access to the WHOIS, and it came about because the registry wrote to us with some concerns about Port 43, and effectively it's around the bulk harvesting of information and how we're currently using rate limiting and around the availability of information. So they wrote to us suggesting that we open a consultation, which we have, to hear from end users as to what we might be able to do to improve this space. So getting the balance right between availability and legitimate use. So what we're looking for really are some guiding principles around whether or not, even if you're multitasking here, drop us an email in amongst a session with just your views around what we might be able to do to improve the process. And obviously there's web-based applications instead of Port 43 or RDAP. What will that mean for making information available? And of course, on the Domain Name Commissioner's website, all existing WHOIS information will still be able to be accessed. So basically, these are just some conversation starters. And so I really want you to focus on this email address. You don't need to fax us. We're not that old, the Domain Name Commission. But email us, or I'm on Twitter as well, so drop me a line because I really want to hear your views around this really important issue. So that's all I really wanted to say in the 7 minutes allocated to me so we can try and keep to time. But if you have any questions, please sing out.
No, I've got one. I work at TradeMe, and we often become the de facto regulator for things that, because no one else does it, and we're big, so people put pressure on us to do things. Do you think there's a risk of that under the copyright stuff that's coming up and the Bill of Rights stuff, that the people in this room will be leaned on to become the de facto regulators of these policies?
Yes. I think that, if we were sitting in this room 20 years ago, I mean, some of us, well, I wasn't, but some people in the room were sitting in the room 20 years ago, and the internet was this niche, right? And now it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. People using it for everything, business, government, services, blah, 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 blah. And so that means that law is catching up, and governments now don't break things by accident. They break them on purpose. They kind of get the tech in some ways. And when you're looking to solve a problem, it's very easy to go, well, here's a technical choke point. You can fix this problem for me. Oh, we don't like that behavior that millions of people are doing. Hey, registry or platform, you tidy this up. We don't really care what the implications of that are, and if it's breaking it, then we'll fix it later. So it's coming, I think. And the way to minimize it is to engage with the debates and add the perspective about the costs of that, about the proper responsibilities and the need to educate the public. And also because some of the cases, if someone is going to lose a lot of money on something, they've got a big incentive to try and do everything they can to fix it. So, Hollywood has got a lot of incentive in pursuing piracy wherever it is. And each person might only lose a little bit from that, so their incentives to fight against it are low. But I think to the extent you're seen as a choke point in a policy debate, you will be targeted by these interests.
Anyone else? Nope. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Oh, yeah. Steve Martin, you here? Mike?
Cute slides. Awesome. Hi, guys. I'm going to have to swap glasses so that I can see my notes and not you guys, because you scare the hell out of me. So, Steve Martin, government, part of the NCSC, which is part of the GCSB, and we are here. So, this is one of our favourite shots of how the world works when you come from it from our perspective. So basically, we're the TIXA team. I'd like to say a big shout out to both guys who left me in the lurch. Both of my engineers have got had urgent family matters, and Norm Vi is now a grandfather, so that was pretty cool. If you happen to know Norm. So, so who we are? We've got Norm Vi, William Lee, both senior engineers. Mike Seddon's our regulatory manager. Our unit manager. And David Rauscher is our regulatory advisor, who keeps us on the straight and narrow for making sure we don't overstep regulatory bounds. As you've heard from a couple of other people in government today, we don't get to set policy, we get to enforce it. And Claire's your lady for policy, as well as other ministers. So we do more than just TIXA. We've been identified as capable of doing network security assessments or risk assessments for emerging technologies. We looked at driverless cars and the new burgeoning space industry, which is great because I always wanted to be a spaceman. Now I get to regulate what goes on payloads for the latest launches. It's pretty cool. So basically, if you want to know why we have TIXA, this is basically material from the unclassified cyber threat report. I've got a couple of copies here if you want to have a look. It's a pretty amazing piece of work for an intelligence agency. We've actually come out over the last 2 years now and put our money where our mouth is and said that we are seeing ongoing threats and are addressing ongoing threats as part of our intelligence operations in New Zealand, or for New Zealand, sorry. 396 total recorded incidents reported last year. Those are incidents that are that the NCSC has been called on to address on behalf of the country. They don't include just standard security threats unless there is some attribution or potential attribution to a state-sponsored threat actor. The critical piece of information you probably want is this one here. So that's 122 incidents in the last year that we are, for an intelligence agency, prepared to stand up and say we have detected state-sponsored threat actors trying to access networks or systems in New Zealand. A lot of people, I've heard it in this room, I used to believe it myself, that we would never, that certainly the GCSB would never put their nuts on the line and say that this is actually a threat. Now they've got stats. You can read them in this. So, if you want to know why we have the TIXA, this is addressing this threat. So, to go back a few years, 2014, the Act came in. The network security part of the Act applies to all network operators, regardless of size. The big operators complain that it's used to hamstring them. The small operators complain, like some of you folk have complained, that it's not fair because you can't possibly abide by it. Unfortunately, it's the law. Marty Lagland's really good for coming up. He's the TIXA registrar, coming up and pointing out that it's a $50,000 fine per day and potential injunctions. We don't quite get that heavy yet. We're collaborative. That's why I'm talking to you and you're listening. Right? It's called collaboration. That's right. I'm from the government, I'm here to help. So unlike Part 2 of the Act, the TICSA applies regardless of size, as like I said. Central to the TICSA Act is those customers. If you can put your hand on your heart and say you're not serving anybody inside that area, then you can probably guarantee that any notification you put through us isn't going to hit a network security risk of national significance. That's what we consider, network security risks of national significance. If you want to do something dumb in your network, feel free. You want to do something dumb and you've got those customers, we're going to work to pick it up. You're going to have to notify if you're affecting customers in that field. The reason being is that you're a threat vector for anybody that takes your services. They inherently trust your service, they inherently trust how you deliver it, caveats notwithstanding. And as I said, if you don't have customers in this area, it is unlikely that any change will provide a network security risk. Some of our small providers are really, really good, the ones that actually engage with us, are really good because they can say they don't have customers like that. Or if they do, it's Bob's Fish and Chip Shop. Bob's Fish and Chip Shop, maybe in food services, he's not a national security provider of service. Okay? So this is how it works. Apologies to anybody that's seen this sort of stuff before. Basically, got 3 days, you send us a notification, we'll respond to you, unless Norm's away on grandfather leave, in which case it may take a little bit longer. But no, seriously, we've got a 3-day response time. Mostly we get responses back in 1 day. If you don't have a response from us in 3 days, let us email us again and that ticks the mailbox. We've only got one contact form, ticks the mailbox. That's to make sure that we don't have multiple ways for us to lose your messages. We'll ask you questions. So if you can provide us as much information as possible, all the information around a change, we can turn your changes around fairly quickly. It says a 20-day SLA. We're down to 10 days, and that's much better than it was to begin with. Working hard. So once we get all of the information, we'll turn the notification around in 20 days. That allows most organisations to be able to do fairly swift work, and it shouldn't impact anybody, hopefully. Again, if we've dropped, if we aren't delivering anything within 20 days, please contact us at that ticks the mailbox. We get caned if we don't maintain our own SLAs. It's very embarrassing, especially as these are self-described and now they're sort of governing our organisation. If we do find a network security risk, you get into a world of hurt. That's where you get into these things. They're called mitigations. It's where you've decided that you want to continue with a choice or an idea or a solution that could put the country at risk if you continue, at least according to us. At that point, you're putting your money where your mouth is and saying that mitigations that you've got will stop a state-sponsored threat actor. Now, Dr. Ian Levy of the NCSC in the UK has said that these guys aren't very sophisticated. That's true, but they are constant. And they will be hammering your network trying to find ways in. If you've got something in your network that's already a backdoor for them, then you're basically giving them the keys without them having to try. So mitigations are a place that we suggest you don't go to. The big things that you want to take out of this is that it's going to take lots more interaction with the regulator. That's me, my smiling face, or the two engineers. And at that point, we're going to go through your plan with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that you've got all the boring stuff that big organisations and small organisations have to do. We take it as read that you do that when you put a notification in. When you get to mitigation level, we want proof of it. It gets hard. Mitigations are for the lifetime of the service or the equipment that you put in, that they've been found for. So for those people that have a difference between CapEx and OpEx in their organisation, that means ongoing OpEx costs for the lifetime of the equipment. Don't forget that a potential mitigation is to withdraw the notification that gave rise to it. What that means is that you can go, actually, we didn't mean to do that, we'll do this. That will also allow you to get out of that area. One of the embarrassing things, or if you want to use the mitigation process or even the notification process as a key for change in your environment, is you can advise us of a change and have it come up as a network security risk, and then a letter gets sent to your CEO or the registered contact. CEOs pay a lot of attention to letters saying thou shalt not continue with your program of work until something's fixed. And we've had a couple of people do some creative management of companies to make sure that a dumb idea doesn't get started. What we suggest instead is when you get to the point where you're thinking about deploying a new widget or a new service, don't come to the TIXA team with one solution. Come to the TIXA team with 3 or 4 solutions. Describe what you're going to describe the over level. Describe the 3 or 4 points that 3 or 4 possible services or hardware options that you're looking at, and give us the opportunity to say, we don't have a problem with your overall proposal, but we think you should come in and get a briefing about option 3. If that causes you risks, or we can call you in and give you a private briefing and let you then go ahead, decide whether or not you wish to go ahead with that anyway, with the advantage of a briefing. So that's the TIXA process. As you're going to hear from Neil, lawful intercept is part of the TIXA process. The ETSI standards came out in the middle of our roadshow last year for network operators. We got asked what the ETSI standards would mean for us. It's like, huh? I don't know. It means a lot for the police, though. The important thing with the ETSI standards is that police are going to be checking to make sure that you do provide them the service that they're requiring. Marty Laglands was really good for last year's presentation, where he dropped a whole bunch of stuff that was before the court, but really, really good material there about why it is that the police need this stuff, to the point where they were able to crack down on an international DDoS and bomb threat operator, and got them into court, which was quite a win. Good controls over how you implement your lawful intercept solution is going to be essential. Good physical and logical separation for the solution, and you're going to have to consider the information around the target and the data gathered on the target. How to make sure that people inside your own organisation don't know that you're looking at their grandmother, basically. Yeah, so that's very briefly that. Recommended reading, Cyber Threat Report. I've got a couple of copies if you want to have a look. The guidance paper that we put out 2 or 3 years ago needs a brush up, but at the moment it's still the best thing we've got. And, ooh, look at that, shiny. I had to work a long time to get that slide to work. We're hiring. We need a new TIXA consultant, someone to work with me and come out and spread the message to everybody. You'll find the ad that we've got on Beyond Ordinary or Government Jobs or LinkedIn or Seek. You can join us. Make sure you bring along a sense of humour, preparedness to stand up in front of possibly hostile audiences, not just in this country. Be prepared to work with a great bunch of people. We work fairly tight-knit. There's only 5 of us in the day-to-day stuff. And look it up. Oh, look at that. Any questions? What? Yay! The man in the corner. Oh, no. Go long. Okay.
Is there any particular format you need these network documents in? You need them in UML, or is like Crayon okay? What do we have to do?
Have you registered as a network operator yet?
I do not operate a network. However, I do design and implement networks for some local government authorities that have public safety things.
So you know, typical. I get really annoyed that a bunch of really intelligent people can't do. They can handle boxes. They can read bizarre freaking scripts that boggle my mind. They can't read the instructions. So that thing there, guidance for network security operators, just saying, read the frickin' manual. Oh, did I mention I used to do IT? I didn't read the manual either. But anyway, next one.
I knew you GCSB texts were slippery.
Excuse me, NCSC.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Part.
His name is John Brewer.
I just not suggesting anything, but let's just say he's not leaving the country without a thorough check. Background. Sorry, anything else?
I'm pretty sure there are more questions after that.
Anybody?
Yep,
All right,
good.
thank you.
Yep. Next, Neil. Yep. Tough act to follow. Unlawful intercept.
As you all want to hear from another government agency, but hopefully this time it is less about read the manual and more of here's a way to interpret it. So I'm kind of presenting just a view and a look at how Ally actually works. Oh, cheers. But when it gets to the nitty-gritty detail, go look at the documentation, go read the standards. I'm not held accountable if you follow it. As a rule of thumb, if you have the customer relationship and your equipment can see the customer's bits and bytes, or your equipment aggregates customer connections or traffic, or a customer's calls are routed through your gateway, you're a network operator. You go to the Tixer Act and there's 3 or 4 pages which describes this, but literally if you can see it going past you, you have an obligation. So when it comes to intercepting, there are 2 categories of the types of information. The juicy stuff, so this is what you think about when it comes to interception. It's the calls, it's the video, it's the data stream. In the Ally domain, this is called the content of communications, or CC, and that's kind of what everybody does by default. The metadata, the bits that go on behind the scenes, are just as important, if not more. What use is the audio from a call if you don't know who's involved? How do we link back the captured packets to a subscriber? More often than not, as I said, the IRI, or the intercept-related information, is overlooked when people are implementing interception solutions. Both of these data types need to be supplied to the surveillance agencies in near real time. So if you were to supply the call in real time, and then a day later supply an email containing who was involved, that's literally not good enough. There are 3 ways that a network operator can be compliant with the Tixer Act. So first off, legacy. That is, you have a solution that was in place before the TICA or Tixer Acts, so they're ancient and been around for years. By having a formal agreement with the Tixer registrar on behalf of the 3 agencies. Having said that though, if you're a network operator and you're stating that once upon a time all I could do was X and I supplied it to agency Y and they accepted it, that's not an agreement. That's just the best you could do at the time, and it was just kind of taken. Or by following one of the ETSI standards published. It's a big long word. August 2017 Telecommunications Interception Capability and Security Usable Format Notice, i.e. what came out last year and the reason why everybody's talking about Ally this year. So why ETSI? Why not just use the system that our engineers use for debugging? So any ally solution needs to take into consideration all of these factors here. So real-time capture and delivery of the content and RI to the surveillance agency. It needs to ensure that every piece of content which has been captured is delivered. It must allow for concurrent delivery of the same content and RI to multiple surveillance agencies, i.e. there may be one target being delivered to multiple different people, not just the police, unfortunately. It needs to include the metadata, so the RI, so such as DHCP release renewal, server status, involved parties, call answer status, etc. The intercept must be transparently provisioned and deprovisioned. So if you have a customer that's never had call waiting and all of a sudden they get it when you provision the intercept, that's not good enough and that's like a telltale sign, right? It must be scalable for both yourselves and the surveillance agencies. So a lot of people come to me and go, well, we'll just do a port mirror and we'll send it to you. That works for you for one intercept, but if you're the police and you've got 100 going at the same time, how does that scale? And also, how do you make sure that everything arrives? Lastly, it must not intercept those telecommunications for which you are not authorised. Likewise, an intercept can only be delivered to the agency that obtained the warrant for it. A lovely one this year where we managed to get everything from Auckland for a while, and one particular network operator, apparently the police is the first menu or the first option on the drop-down list. So literally you've kind of broken the act by just doing that. The ETSI technical specifications provide a template and direction as to how and when the specified mandatory fields are required. Of interest in the LI space is the 102.232 work program, which consists of 7 technical standards. The first standard is the -1 or Part 1, some people call it. That describes the interface between the network operator and a surveillance agency, kind of simplifies in the diagram here. In terms of a postal service, this describes what an envelope is, and the envelope is, how to address it, and how to send it. See, not the only person that can do flash slides. It also specifies how to perform application level keep alives, their frequency and recovery mechanisms. So we know when you've disappeared. So next couple of slides are just smashing through some examples of actually what's contained in the information that you hand over the wire. So this is an example of what needs to be written on the envelope. So this is the header of the -1 part of the standard. So all the ETSI ASN1 specifications start with a domain ID. This details exactly what standard, what version, and release is in use. This ensures that the receiving system uses the correct parser and the values and attributes that are supplied are parsed correctly. The Lawful Interception Identifier, or LIID, is the target identifier supplied to the network operator by the surveillance agency, and you use that to tag everything you send back to us. Network identifier is who's sending that information. You probably don't think it's important, but when you've got 100 people sending information all at the same time, it's good for debugging. Network element identifier, where on the network was it captured? Most people go, why do you need that? Well, we don't need it, but when we come back to you and say you've got a problem, it solves your troubleshooting. You're halfway there. Communication identifier is the subscriber's session number, 0 in this example because it's from a keep alive. And sequence number at the bottom is a number that increments from 0 for a given subscriber's session. So if it's a call, every record that you produce would have an incremental number. And we use it at the surveillance agencies to ensure that everything that was captured as actually received, if we're missing header number 4, we know that part of that call flow is missing. So using the 102.232-1, any one of these payload types can be used as the body. Of interest to most of you is the -3 for UBA and UFB services, and -5 for VoIP. So in this particular kind of demonstration here, the subscribers' raw PDUs from a mirror are wrapped and sent as a content payload to the surveillance agency. Metadata such as a subscriber's attach, detach, or IP address allocation, are translated into the appropriate fields and sent as an RI payload down the bottom. The subscriber sessions become correlation IDs, which are used in both the content and RI events, and that kind of allows us to correlate the two together to know what's going on. Carrier-grade network equipment generally offers some level of LI functionality. From our experiences, this is not enough to make a network operator compliant. As Steve said, as lawful interception falls within an area of security interest, there are security considerations that need to be taken into account. Thus, you must notify NCSC when making changes in this domain. Right, this is an example of a packet that has been encapsulated in the 102.232-3 content payload. As with raw network traffic, there is no timestamping in the payload. The timestamping from when this was captured is transmitted in the header. But I mean, literally that's just octets off the wire, given a header and away it goes. Likewise, this is a IRI event from when a subscriber's router has renewed its lease. I literally got a new IP address and away it went. So, ACKs, standards and documentation are all well and good. You want a working example. So the open source tool here, CyberProbe, can be used as an introduction to lawful interception and ITSI streaming protocols. So directly from this project's documentation, the software consists of two components: a probe which collects data packets and forwards it over a network in standard streaming protocols, a monitor which receives the streamed packets, decodes the protocols, and interprets the information. So now if I do this, it all becomes a little bit more interesting to us. So going back to our generic model and slipping in CyberProbe as the LI mediation, we get a system that can capture specific traffic, encapsulate it, and send it to they call it an endpoint. This bit of software comes with an ITSI receiver application that can be used to decode the ITSI stream and output it in libpcap. So you're going to get to do both sides of the equation: capture, encapsulate, and pretend to be the LEA. But there is always a but. Notice it does not integrate to any radio systems on the left there. It will not encapsulate the metadata you're required to. So it's kind of part of a solution, but not a full one, and it doesn't particularly scale. CyberProbe will generate a virtual subscriber activate IRI event when a target is added to the configuration. These events are from the standard. They do not, however, correspond to the correct events. Good enough to kind of observe what's going on and to look inside of it, but that's about it. So if we kind of compare CyberProbe back to what's required of an LI system, an LI mediation platform, real time, given enough resources, lossless delivery in a very small scale, it does, but it all depends how we use and what goes on between your mirror port and where it captures. Concurrent delivery, no. Data from every target is sent to every configured endpoint. So if you're intercepting for the police and you happen to have multiple people configured on the end, multiple agencies configured on the end, it would replicate that traffic to all the agencies, and you've just blown yourself again. Metadata, no, it doesn't do that. Transparent, it all depends how you pick up the stuff from the network. Scalable, no, because it delivers to everybody. And selective, yes, but only for using static addresses. So to make the most out of CyberProbe is a demonstration tool, so give you something to play with and feel and kind of see what's going on. I'm looking at doing some changes to it. So firstly, the domain ID was presented incorrectly. Then also making it reflect one of the 102.232-3 formats listed in the textable usable format notice, therefore making it a nice comparison tool for you. And adding application layer and TCP keep alives functionality. And finally trying to modify those RI events, which is synthetic, but at least making it usable and a bit more valid. So real quick here, and should be, you all should know what's going on here, just Wireshark, because I got that question last week of how can I look at what's going on across the wire. Literally to decode the BER, which is ASN1, right click on the line, decode as BER, and hey presto, everything turns up. Sometimes you've got to do another layer, which is the syntax standard is ASN1, and you get a true representation. So that's cool, but you then need to go back to the ASN1 specification to figure out what all the fields mean. So, as you're probably aware, there are 3 surveillance agencies in New Zealand. When personnel involved in the lawful interception and network security domains change, network operators must update the TIXA register to reflect this. So since, well, I don't know how many calls we made this year to people that are in the wrong companies, just say it again. When personnel involved in the lawful interception and network security domains change, operators must update the TIXA register to reflect this. It's not particularly hard. Joe has left. He is replaced with Y. The TIXA registrar maintains the TIXA register. So that's the fellow there with the weird cocktail. And is the point of contact for the lawful interception queries. Likewise, the register is used for those authorised within the agencies, only those authorised, not all the cops around the country get to look at the list, within the agencies to determine who an interception warrant can be shared with. So there's no worry about the fact you give us your name and everybody's going to be calling you left, right and centre. Cool. And the last thing is the fact that discuss what you can and can't do with us. That's kind of the first step going down the road to making yourself compliant. That's pretty much it. So quick and nasty, and we're back on track. Any questions?
You'll tolerate a question from the. This is the first I'd ever heard about TIXA, so I've been like Googling it while you've been talking in this lawful intercept. My first thought is the requirements placed on network operators seems to be pretty onerous. Because I'm going to be very political here. You know, I don't want to insult anything, and I mean I understand the reason, at least the thought behind having it. But I'm like seeing the juicy bits, and to the best of my knowledge, all my juicy bits are pretty covered up. I mean, SS everywhere. I use VPNs. What is the requirement on the network operator if, I mean, you talk about in order to comply with TIXA, you have to have the metadata, you have to have the real-time data, and it's like, if you were trying to intercept me, it would be difficult, and I'm a good guy. You know, I'm not even using the bad guy stuff. So how is a network operator supposed to comply with TIXA without having
that's all covered in the Act. So you intercept what you can see, unless you're the one providing the service. So if you're the one putting the encryption on the, like, let's say the access link for your customers, you've got the key, and therefore you must provide it to us, well, the underlying unencrypted data. Or if we go for like most VoIP providers, they do an encrypted access, but the core is unencrypted. So therefore that would be the place where you need to be able to capture it. And you're only responsible for the services that you're providing. So it's the whole thing if you're seeing the bits and bytes going past your switches and your gateways. Back to the very first question was, it's very onerous on us. That's the reason why there are two different levels of TIXA, or sorry, LI and TIXA. So the intercept ready and the intercept capable. I think I've got the right words there. So the under 4,000 customers and over. And so the idea being that as companies grow, they invest proactively.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. So we do all network operators need to be NC compliant.
So if we go back through the three different ways you could have been compliant, one presumes you were compliant with the Legacy Act, in which case you're fine, or you had an agreement, because they were the only two options available to anybody prior to, what was it, October last year, or August last year. It seemed to be, it was a surprise to everybody when we went, the default for New Zealand is ETSI because it's open, it's followable, it's done by industry forum, which, you know, the vendors that you use are part of. So literally it was a while ago. So if you're not, come and have a discussion.
He saw you too. So. Yeah, asking for a friend. Yep.
No. I mean, so literally at the moment we know there's a mixed, what do you call it, mixed bunch in New Zealand of people that have the kit and have the capability and people that don't. Right now, well, literally everyone's gone through November where their CEOs have gone, we are fully compliant. Well, we have a network that we must be fully compliant on. At any one point in time, somebody can be compliance tested. And that's, you know, that's when you go down the bad road. Whereas if you're up front and come and say, these are my capabilities, this is what I'm doing to resolve it, or this is what I can do for you tomorrow, and X, Y, Z, it's a better place to be in.
Just a question from me. So we have, in our business, I'm from TradeMe, so we have information requests come in from the police, and most of those come with the required documentation, but not all of them come with the required documentation.
So information requests come under completely different acts.
Yeah, but my question is around how are the operators in the room supposed to know if the request that comes in is legitimate? Like, how do they tell? Because they get one a year.
Yeah.
How do they know that it's actually legitimate, there is a warrant, and they actually have to do it, as opposed to they can, how do they know when they can push back?
So not my exact domain, but so for the major players out there, there are templates that are used. For the police, we've got a particular set of things. For the other agencies, they've got a whole bunch of new legislation that they're working through about how they've got to do it. If you're a smaller player that you don't get many, generally it probably would come from the registrar, because he's got that contact and that relationship with you.
Oh yeah.
The email address and the registrar, so Marty, is always available, right? Well, he likes to sleep, but if you're in doubt, that's the way to go.
So if you're in doubt about something, email the registrar and confirm.
Yeah, he can go, well, actually, no, what's Jim Bob trying to email you for? He's not even from an agency.
Yep. Cool.
And same goes for the text. If you're concerned, if you're getting strange contacts from people that are pretending to be government people, other than us, of course.
Which hat are you wearing?
Just send it to the Tixa mailbox. Like I said, just one. Don't spell it. Don't do that. A whole bunch of things that other people have complained to us about why we don't respond to them. But send it to the Tixa mailbox. Look it up online. And the same with the Tixa registrar. And that way you'll get confirmation. It's no different from standard phishing mails.
Oh, you're keen.
A friend of mine had a production order which asked for websites that a particular customer had visited like a month ago. So it was, from what my friend told me, it looked like it was outside the scope of LI to request that kind of. Is that an expectation that ISPs are going to keep,
so I mean,
logs of
you will
web
always get cops that will write their own things. Yeah. Literally, that's that whole go back, and if you think it's outside of the scope, it should be the way it should go. One thing I touched on for the people who did come to PNHQ we did a presentation last year, I think it was. Must have been last year, it's been Christmas. Was the fact that, unbeknown to a lot of people, there was the whole Copyright Act where you need to keep the IP addresses used by your customers for, is it 3 months or 6 months or something crazy? And which was news to everybody. So again, completely not my domain, but it was something related to, hang on, another piece of information, another thing you've got to keep, another thing to take into consideration. It still wouldn't have solved your problem unless your logs are that good.
Cool.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, sorry, more from contentious from ahead. Here we go.
Hello. So, full disclosure, I did work for TradeMe for 3 years. It just occurs to me that TradeMe gets a lot of this, as Gerard has noted. And from what I could tell, it seemed like they were pretty good about actually saying, take a long walk off a short pier when it was appropriate, which is good. That's good for all of us, and it kept the police honest, etc. So the thing is that it's obviously unrealistic for a small-time network operator to be able to do that, even to know when it's appropriate, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. I suppose you might get good answers out of mailing TIXA, but it seems to me that perhaps it would be better to have some sort of community organization group, whatever, which is independent, which TradeMe might be able to help with setting up things like that, because they do have a lot of expertise or advise. I would suggest that could be an appropriate thing for people in this room, that there would be some sort of third-party neutral advisor that could say that, well, this is beyond privacy considerations, or you're overreaching, or you need a warrant, or things like that. So, a thought.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, great. Action item from me. Thanks, Ed. Cool. Thank you. So Dave's got right a reply. Is that the plan? No? Yeah, in 1 minute.
Hey, so I'm Dave, and I'm talking about a little project we've kind of kicked off called OpenLI that might actually address some of the questions I just asked to Neil before. But first of all, a little disclaimer. I'm actually talking about legislation here. I'm not a lawyer. So potentially you've got legal questions, you might need to talk to a lawyer. Quick recap of TIXA. Part 1's just kind of boring intro stuff. Part 3, our GCSB kind of friends look after. And that's probably what actually concerned us the most early on when TIXA came in, is actually telling the GCSB every time we make a change. But in all honesty, that's been pretty quick, or pretty easy to actually do. Then we've got part 2. And as Neil said before, if you've got less than 4,000 customers, you have some duties. And if you have more than 4,000 customers, you have more duties. So until recently, probably most of us figured that actually if we just produce a PCAP and then maybe ship that to the police, that's absolutely fine. The police have been very clear recently that lawful intercept isn't about PCAPs, and lawful intercept's all about doing stuff using the ETSI standards. The other approach a lot of people have taken recently would be that approach. And maybe if you've taken that approach, again, you maybe need to do that. So anyway, moving on to more useful approaches to lawful intercept. Probably a lot of us, or some people, may want to actually talk to a big vendor. I've talked to some of those over the last few months, and they'll probably want quite a bit of money. They'll probably want some money regularly to actually support the product, and it may not be very customised to your needs. So what we've actually got instead is a little project we're calling OpenLI. Now, as that name suggests, OpenLI is open source. It does lawful intercept. It is made in New Zealand, and it is free, with a little asterisk next to that. So as a bit of background, I emailed the NZNOG list on the 25th of August last year about lawful intercept. And if you look on the mailing list, you actually see 20 public replies on the mailing list. If you look in my email, which you probably can't look at, you see 49 replies, and unless you're the police. And basically there was a lot of off-list discussion. But what we took away from that is there's a lot of interest in people in this room and people in this industry to work together on LI. So around that time, I started talking to Richard Nelson at the WAND Group, and he was interested in our problem. For anyone overseas or anyone that's been living in a cave, the WAND Group, they're attached to Waikato Uni. They've been very involved in monitoring New Zealand networks. They have a little library called LibTrace. They have a lot of experience in capturing data. They had no experience at all in ETSI. And they have a resource known as Shane Alcock. And to use his words, he's an expert in packet capture, analysis, and export. So soon after this point, we actually had a few ISPs willing to work together. Those ISPs were willing to put some money together, give that to the WAND Group, and the WAND Group are going to write some software to actually do LI. So we'll move on to a real quick kind of technical overview of that software. So Neil's actually covered most of this already, so we'll go real quick. ETSI involves actually capturing payloads, so IP or possibly voice data, and sticking a header on top of that, and that's your CCs. ETSI also involves capturing metadata, so for most of us that's actually radius data, so starts and stops and session keeper lives, or if it's voice traffic you might be looking at sort of stuff that's normally in SIP headers or your CDR records, and they're your IRIs. One real kind of brief challenge to do with ETSI is that all of our networks are different. We all use different vendors, we all have different technologies involved, and we all have different architectures. So we're trying to cater for the networks that we all have. So somewhere here I have a laser pointer, yep. Cool, so basically this is a diagram trying to show the kind of brief, and it's oversimplified solution we're putting together. So first of all, you will get some warrants that come from your agencies. Now those warrants won't actually get fed directly into the mediation server that we're showing there. They will turn up as emails or phone calls or faxed warrants or maybe the men in black knocking on your door. But either way, we're going to feed that into a mediation server. That mediation server could be a VM, it could be an x86 box, it doesn't really matter. What we actually show on the diagram though is a collector. Now the idea behind a collector is every place you have a BNG or every place you have an SBC, you'll stick a collector. Now the collector will actually run on true x86 hardware, it will have a few NICs in it, and it takes data in. So what we show feeding in from the BNG, of course it may come from an SBC, is you'll feed in your mirrored IP, you'll feed in your RTP, you'll feed in your radius, and you'll feed in your SIP. Now with this solution, there is an assumption that you'll only feed in the IP data of the person you're capturing at that time. You could, however, feed in all RTP, all radius, and all SIP, and then the collector can actually work out what it actually needs. The collector will do fancy stuff. It'll put the etc headers on it needs. It creates both the CC records and the IRI records. It sends them down a tunnel that's encrypted, which Neil mentioned before, and that turns up at the relevant agency. So we've got a few different stages we're planning on delivering. Stage one is basically taking IP packets and sticking an etc header on them and being able to export them, and that's being worked on at the moment. Stage two is generating the metadata that actually wraps around that data, so the IRIs, and also maintaining a kind of list of IP to user mapping. Stage three is having that mediation server we showed on the previous diagram, and that basically blasts configs from what I gather out to the collector. And stage four is VoIP collection. Now, there's a good reason we've left VoIP to the last kind of minute, and that's because the police should be able to, and I'm speaking on their behalf and I shouldn't do, actually allow you to add a DDI into a call. So effectively stream a call over the PSTN into a police DDI, and they should be able to do the capture that way. So there is actually a solution out there already which most of us could do to actually capture voice calls. So to add some timeframes onto that, we're actually aiming to deliver stage one next month. We're aiming to deliver stage 2 and 3 in tandem, and hopefully by late April. And then we're hoping to do the VoIP collection by early June. At that stage, you should actually be able to perform capture in the ETSI standards. Now, we'd like to actually write some extra features as well. That could be interop with existing LI solutions using an API or similar. That could be packaging and documentation of the project, or that could be actually wrapping a web UI around it to make it easier to actually manage. Now, all of this can only be done if we actually get some more money in. And to be clear, we actually have applied for a grant from a New Zealand organisation that does stuff to do with the internet. They might be in the room. At the end of this all, we're actually intending on releasing some open source software. It will have a GPL license or similar. It will be available on GitHub. If you participate in this project, you can actually look at the pre-release code as it's written. You could do some guinea pig testing as long as you've got someone that you can legally actually do that on, and you'll have access to the developer. Something important that actually both Neil and Steve have actually already mentioned, but any intercept software that you write or use to actually do part 2 of TIXA needs to be approved under part 3 of TIXA. So on to what you can do if you're a network operator. First of all, you could do absolutely nothing. What should happen is in June, you'll actually have access to the open LI software on GitHub. You can download that and you can use that in your production network. Your support requests will be assigned a priority. That might be 0. You could participate, your other option is to participate in the development of this project. Now, I'm going to be clear on this. By participating, I'm saying give us money. We'll use that money to write some code, and we want to write some good features and all of that. If you do that, you'll get some warm fuzzies for helping your community. You'll get access to pre-release code. We'll try our best to actually cater to your architecture, and that's the really important part, is that you may have a network that's a bit different to us, and the project will try and actually cater for that network. We, as an Open Ally, can help with some testing. Open Ally can potentially help with integration with the police and testing with the police, and the police have offered to sort of help test compliance under their sort of Part 3 of the Act, Part 2. But also, if we get some extra money, whether that's a grant or more people being involved, we can actually do some of the extras we'd like to do. So really, that's just a real brief overview of the project. There's a few key people involved. If you know any of us already, just contact us. If you don't know us, then just email all of us and one of us might get back to you. And generally, we'd be very keen on getting more people involved. So anyway, any questions? And I see Shane over there, so some of these, if they're technical, might just get bumped to Shane. No questions? We can go to...
Oh, there we go.
They're all writing out their checks.
What vendors are you supporting at the moment?
So at the moment, we're just purely... Oh, sorry. At the moment, the focus is really on just writing something that you could roll onto a Linux box, and as long as you can mirror all of the traffic that is required to that Linux box, then it will come out. So if you know how to operate your vendor equipment and can mirror it, then we'll support you. But in terms of the interoperability, that's something that we've left for a later date. But the people who come to us and have a few dollars to rub together will get the first say in what vendors we try to work with.
Good catch.
How do you derive metadata from a network that doesn't run radius?
I guess in that case, the question becomes, what are you using to assign IP addresses to your users? So, for instance, DHCP might be another common one that we would give some consideration to supporting. But otherwise, it sort of comes down to how do you do that? And if you want support for that, then you better come and tell us that that's how you do it, and I'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, when talking to the police, basically you could have statically configured customers, so static IPs on a big layer 2 network or whatever. Now, my take on that is if you've got those customers, there is no metadata. You just assume they're always online. There are no starts, there are no stops, there's no keep alives. Either their IP is there or it isn't. So to me, there is no metadata in that case. The police may feel differently about that. Sorry, and I couldn't hear that.
What percentage of people in here have the capability to do lawful interception now, as it stands?
I think there's only one person.
For a friend.
Yeah. I think there's only one person in the room that can answer that, and he can't really say, I'd say.
It seems to me that there's not a lot of people that can do it. So what's the recourse for us if we can't? And is this the only way to do it? Are there other tools if we're all using mixed vendors and lower tech that won't have this sort of Etsy stuff built in? There's a fair percentage of us that are incapable.
Well, I guess that's the whole point of this project is there are a lot of Etsy solutions out there for lawful intercept. Most have a big price tag. We're talking 5 figures, 6 figures. So this is our way of actually, like if all of us just chucked a small amount of cash, like for what our everyday kind of budgets are, into a kitty and made this work, and then Shane's willing to support it for a little while, we have a solution and we can actually do lawful intercept properly. As to who's doing what, I would assume there's a couple of big telcos that have bought a big vendor solution. I would assume there's a lot of us that have just buried our heads in the sand. That's my take on it.
I don't want to bury my head in the sand. I'm happy to provide, but it's a very complicated thing to do if you're a small network, and the cost of that is more than you turn over in a year.
Yeah, well, if you've got more than 4,000 customers, my take on it is that you need to do it.
I've got 25,000 customers a day, but they're on hotspot networks. But under TIXA, I passed the threshold to have to provide that intervention. So I've only got 400 or 500 fibre connections, but because I have 25,000 people a day logging on and 4,000 or 5,000 people online at any given time, I'm required to provide this. But
yeah, you may want to talk to the police about whether your whether your Wi-Fi customers or your hotspot customers are actually covered under this Act.
I have, and the answer was yes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe you should participate in this project.
I'm thinking of contributing. I'll try.
Hey, this is a New Zealand-focused project, which is cool, but it seems like it'd be useful to people elsewhere, and there's potentially a lot of money elsewhere as well. Is that something that's been investigated?
Yeah, so actually Richard and I just mentioned yesterday that if this works, we could head over to Aussie, go to ASNOG, whatever's sort of required. Like if the software is written and works well, which I've got a lot of faith in, then this could be used anywhere where they're using ETSI as their standard for LI. And that, I'd assume that is a lot of Europe as well. What was that, Neil? Close, cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nothing else?
I think so. Cool. So I'm feeling a lot more comfortable now because we're behind time. So we'll just take 20 minutes and we'll be back here because we don't want to be late, we'll miss our boats. So what's 20 minutes from now? It's 15:35. 35.